Welcome into the Rosewood Wealth Management YouTube channel. I'm Ben George, along with John Stillman, a chartered retirement planning counselor at Rosewood Wealth. John, I know you haven't run into this problem yet, probably because you're still a young lad yourself. But
right.
As you get older in this business, right, you're probably going to have some clients that are going to start having the kind of question about, well, John's probably getting near retirement. Should I think about somebody else? That's the question we have today. So probably not relevant to you yet, but it will be at some point.
Well, I mean, if I can keep homesteading at the pace that I'm currently going at, I could retire in 2 years because I'd be completely self-sufficient, right? No, what I've always told people is my plan is I would like to have something that my kids can inherit and take over if they want to. So they're not going to be required to take over the family business, but I would like for them to have the option. So Lily's 10 right now. Amos is 7, about to be 8 at the time that we're having this conversation. So let's say 20 years down the road, if they haven't wanted to take it over by then I would say, all right, maybe now is the time to sell it. That would put me in my early 60s. So, loosely now at age 40, that's the plan. And some people would say, why are you already thinking about retirement at 40? I'm not thinking about retirement. I'm just thinking about succession because I've seen a lot of guys in this business get to be in their 60s and they don't really have a succession plan. So I want to make sure I'm thinking far enough down the road on that.
Right. Well, that's your perspective on it. But I have a question I want to run by you today that kind of looks at it from the other side of this equation as well, from Sarah. And she's wondering, she's been working with the same advisor for years, almost 30 years, in fact. And in some ways, she says he's been like a dad to her, but now he's over 80 and he keeps saying he doesn't plan to retire, kind of like yourself. I don't have any plans to retire. But wouldn't he have to at some point, right? So someday she says she feels like she should work with somebody younger, but also can't imagine ever leaving that relationship with him. They built that trust over so many years. So how do you handle a situation like that where you kind of see, hey, there could be an ending coming at some point, or should I get ahead of potentially my advisor retiring? What's the best course of action for me?
Yeah. Well, so let me give you the perspective that I see from inside the business. So I see a lot of guys who are older and advanced in years, still working as a financial advisor. And the reason for that, it could be one of two reasons. For one, it could be that they have done a really poor job of doing their own financial planning. So they might have a lot of clients, they might have done well for a lot of clients, but they have not saved and invested well themselves. You think, well, that's got to be pretty rare, right? No, it's actually more common than you would think, because a lot of people in this business are just financial salespeople. They're not actually that wise with money. They're just good at selling products. And so if you're dealing with somebody like that, it's completely possible that they haven't necessarily done a great job of saving for themselves, because the sales mentality is just, well, I'm going to always go out and do better the next year. And you just never really start building wealth yourself. So I've seen guys that are in their late 60s, 70s. In fact, I know somebody who's late 70s. He has 4 ex-wives and I think the same number of boats. And he just has a very expensive lifestyle and he can't retire. Like, just the math doesn't allow it. So you have some people like that. You have other people who have done a really good job building a business that doesn't depend on them. And so they could sell the business, they could retire, but they say, look, the business runs just fine. I can go take a vacation for 3 weeks and, all my clients are still taken care of. Like, nothing has gone wrong with anybody. And so why would I sell or retire? I like talking to my clients. I like having conversations with them, maintaining those relationships. But there's no need for me to completely step out of the picture because I still have freedom and time, and I have systems that run the business well. So that's two very different types of guys, right? That could be working in their 70s. So you have to kind of figure out which of those it is, because if it's the guy who hasn't done a great job of saving for his own retirement, is that really the guy you want advising you? And if it's somebody who's done a really good job creating a business, then you have to ask yourself, all right, well, is my relationship with this individual or is it with this company? So I've heard this from a lot of people where they've said exactly what Sarah has said here, which was, look, I've been working with him forever and, he's getting older. I think he's still sharp, but, what do I do? And then a year later, they're coming to me and saying, well, he's saying he's not retiring, but they're now trying to kind of push me off on this other guy in the office. And I don't know this guy. I never had a relationship with him. If I have to start scratch with this guy, I would rather just go ahead and move things over to you. So that's sometimes the way it unfolds, is the handoff, the generational handoff from the advisor that you've known to the advisor that's taking over as the successor may or may not be somebody that you want to work with. So sometimes that creates a point where it's easier for you to make a transition than it would have been otherwise.
I'm assuming, I'm curious what your perspective will be on this as you maybe get to that point, or you see maybe I'm 5 or 10 years out. Will you start having these conversations with clients yourself on, hey, here's my plan, here are your options, here's what I suggest you do? Or is that something that the client has to be more proactive about in terms of asking you and starting to have those discussions with you about what your future plans are?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people will ask me now, like, what's your succession plan? Which I think a lot of people would say, why would you ask that of a 40-year-old? Which I'm not completely used to calling myself a 40-year-old, by the way. I haven't been 40 that long. But a lot of people would say, why would you ask that? I think it's actually a reasonable question to ask, because it's just, if nothing else, it's going to give you a clue into, how I think long-term. And if you can kind of see the way that I think, then that might apply to the way that I would think about your money too. So it's not a bad question to ask of anybody necessarily. I will be very proactive as I'm getting close to that stage of life of saying, hey, here's what we're going to do. And, if everything goes as I would love it to happen, one or both of my kids is already involved in the business at that point, and, the handoff is seamless. I know a lot of guys throughout the country who have done that. Son or daughter has gotten involved in the business, and pretty soon they just, it's like a older mom or dad fades out to the background slowly. Son or daughter comes into the foreground slowly, and nobody ever perceives that a transition happens. In an ideal world, that's how you want it to go. But sometimes it doesn't always work out like that, so you have to have contingency plans. Honestly, it's not a lot different than your retirement plan, right? You want to make sure that you have a plan laid out, but you also need backup plans in case life doesn't unfold like you planned for it to.
Yeah. Always the case. But a great question, Sarah, and I know one that pops up quite a bit from people that have these relationships, and they're important relationships you've had for many, many years, and really have gone through a lot with your advisor for sure. So great question to ask. And if you have one for us, we'd love to hear from you. You can obviously drop a comment down below if you have something for us, or you can always reach out to John directly at 800-545-2991. You can call or text Rosewood Wealth Management. Please like and subscribe as well. We appreciate that. And John, we'll do it again soon.
Talk to you then.
Carolina Wealth Stewards doing business as Rosewood Wealth Management is a registered investment advisor in the state of North Carolina. The material presented is intended to be general information and should not be construed by any consumer as the rendering of personalized investment advice.